YouTube, Alex here with another Freebird Media live stream. I am going to keep this one fairly short, I hope. I just wanted to go over a few quick things and announce that Freebird Media is going to be rebranding, so I won't be doing that much live streaming for a while, but just wanted to go over a few things. And there's also an article that's come out about Warren Kinsella that I think is a good starting point to talk about, and then I can elaborate on some of the rebranding stuff. So for those of you watching this, by the way, I've unpublished the Facebook page for Freebird Media. I'll go over that later, but if you wonder where, that isn't operating right now, so it's just the YouTube channel and the website at the moment. I haven't published anything lately on the website, but and I've cleaned up the YouTube channel a lot. Like I said, I'll get into all of that in a bit. First, I'll open up the stream by talking about an article, a CBC article actually, but a very relevant one. And let me share the link in the, actually there's a link in the description of this right now, but I'll share it here in the chat as well. And it is titled, Recordings Reveal Details of Campaign to Attack Maxime Bernier, PPC, as Racist Before Election. Strategist Warren Kinsella told his Daisy Group employees Hamish and Walsh would be asking about results. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about, this is Warren Kinsella and his ex-wife, or soon-to-be ex-wife, Lisa, who it seems she's kind of behind the whistleblowing of Kinsella here on the right, but these two are both game players in the world of public relations, and this article is kind of damning. It brings up a point that I want to talk about, a meta point I want to talk about, and that's just the negativity and hate involved in politics is something that I've had, been exposed to long enough now that I need a break from it. And there's lots of different valid points being made all across the political spectrum, and there's also a lot of hatred all across the political spectrum. So, I would say that it's true to a point that there were some people that are, I don't think the majority by any, I think a minority of people that were like racist or hateful were drawn to the PPC because they were racist or hateful. But I also think that people are drawn to the other major parties who are racist and hateful too, and that doesn't make any of these parties racist. And I think that the PPC wasn't racist, and that what Warren Kinsella's PR group did to them was unfair and kind of undermines, the democratic process, and also shows how much, pardon me, how much hate is actually coming, because there's absolutely a lot of toxic hate and negativity on the right, and I can't extend it anymore. So I very much want to distance myself from fringe right people and politics like that, and identity politics really, to a degree, just because it's so toxic on both sides. But you'll see what I mean as I read parts of this article here. It says, audio recording shared with CBC News reveal political strategist Warren Kinsella told employees working on a campaign against the People's Party of Canada that leader Maxime Bernier was a racist and a white supremacist who would be easy to expose in the lead-up to the federal election campaign. Dubbed Project Cactus, the campaign against Bernier and the PPC was run by Kinsella's political consulting firm, Daisy Group. Kinsella made the comments during a staff meeting about the campaign in May. Sorry guys, I just realized I could get some better lighting here. The recordings were provided to CBC News by a source who was present for the meetings and asked not to be named due to concerns about retaliation. In the same May 16th recording, Kinsella is heard telling staff that Hamish and Walsh will start to ask what Daisy Group is delivering on Project Cactus if they don't start spilling some blood. Kinsella again refers to both Hamish and Walsh in a separate meeting discussing Project Cactus on May 30th. And if you click on the link and you go to the article, there's the audio here of him talking. I'll let you hear this for yourself.
Everybody else, go and be nasty, be mean, get me content. Leaving this afternoon, all of you are ordered to leave here early tomorrow. Okay? But the War Room Assignment stuff continues.
Okay, so I really just hope everyone hears that and understands exactly what he just said. So, Warren Kinsella just clarified that it was them specifically that were basically all of the propaganda about the racism and the hatred was coming from his group, or primarily from this group. And keep in mind, they were working. The Daisy Group seems to be working for the conservatives at this point. So dirty all around here, in my opinion, this game. But he just said in the quote that you heard, "I want you to take all of the hatred. Let's see what it was. I want the hatred you have for Maxime Bernier to wash over you as a purifying force. There's nobody in the country doing what we're doing to Max Bernier." So he just said in his own words, he's saying, he reminds me of like Palpatine in Return of the Jedi, like, good, embrace the hate, like, use it. And there's nobody in the country doing what we're doing to Bernier. So he's putting himself on record saying, like, make no mistake, we're the ones that are doing this. By the way, this is the kind of stuff that leads to this kind of thing. So a lot of people are and I also am gonna say something here. I'm trying to get different perspectives on things, and I have a conversation going here on Twitter with our collective, the Antiracist Canada blog, and if anyone's interested, I'll share the thread here, and you can join on Twitter and join the conversation. Let me put this thread in the. So here you can go on Twitter and join this if you want, because this is kind of showing you the more, I guess, the far left mindset on this. So I shared the link on Twitter to this CBC article, and I tagged them and another friend, and they responded, "I might argue with the tactics, but not the sentiments. Racism within the PPC was acknowledged as a problem by former PPC members and provided as a reason for leaving. Antiracist Canada, which is the Anti-Yellow Vest Canada Twitter page, have documented many examples." And I've dealt with enough of the trash right and people in the Yellow Vest Canada group and stuff to know that there's definitely, like, elements of the trash right that were attracted to the PPC, probably because of the anti mass migration stuff and mass immigration stuff and those things, and then just negative people, negative haters. So there's some truth in that, but and they admit that the tactics aren't good, but the sentiment being that, like, it's okay, it's essentially, or it's justified if you take a Machiavellian approach. It's justified to attack them because shoot, my camera's going to change. I'm going to have to go out of high def soon. Sorry, guys. It's okay to attack him because he is a white supremacist, or I just don't think is actually true. So I had responded, I respect that opinion, but have you considered that although some racists may have been in the party itself wasn't racist? I know people who I consider to be racist who vote Liberal. Does that make the Liberal Party racist? And because that's true, I think there's just as much, there are lots of, racist in the mainstream Liberal Party. So there's liberals, there's racists in all the parties, but they answered, "I think one has to look at the platform of the party. I know of people who vote Green, NDP, and Liberal who are racist, but the platforms of the parties are not. The PPC, however, appears to have cultivated racial animus and grievances. That, I think, puts it in another category." And this is the thing that I don't think I agree with, because uniquely condemning the PPC for racial animus or something like that just seems unfair, given that I think that there is a lot of legitimate anti-white rhetoric and anti-white propaganda out there, which triggers people, and that's kind of the thing that leads to people becoming on the fringe right a lot of the time. And you just see, toxic identity politics are just across the spectrum, obviously, and so I think it's unfair to say that the platform of the PPC was fundamentally racist, because I don't think it was, and there were a lot of people of color and non-white people involved in the party, and I think it had a very libertarian spirit to it. So I just think that it's unfair to do that, and I think that Kinsella and what his PR firm do kind of represent everything, a lot of what's wrong with our culture and our politics. We don't have a functioning democracy, in my opinion, but the spirit of it is good, and I think that this is the kind of stuff that completely undermines it. And a lot of people say, well, isn't this just kind of par for the course? Because in politics, like, war rooms are used by all the parties to assassinate other parties, and so on and so on. But the thing is, I just think that it's all um, condemnable, and it's not good for anyone. I don't defend it coming from any angle, but especially in this last election, which was kind of important to me. I was involved in covering it the whole time, and I usually don't vote, but I was inspired enough to go and vote for the PPC in the last election. I liked their meta issues and stuff, and I don't agree that being against mass immigration makes you um, a racist at all. So I don't think that that's a fair thing to make. One thing, as I rebrand after the channel after this stream, um, I'm gonna keep hyping this book list that I've published, because there's 7 books on my recommended reading list that kind of sum up the channel over the last 3 years, I think. And one that is a really super easy read that I just threw out there is Propaganda by Rebranding, just so people understand more about it, because we live in a culture just saturated with it from all sides. And propaganda in and of itself isn't, in my opinion, isn't necessarily good or bad. It's like a gun. It's just a tool. But understanding how it works, because a lot of people make bad propaganda, obviously, and then propagate it. Um, I just recommend this because it's an easy read, and a lot of people don't read, especially on the right, and they think that YouTube can substitute for reading. And the thing about that is YouTube can absolutely supplement reading, but if you want to be someone who's actually trying to develop their intellect, or like learn and get a good understanding of things, you have to read, and you can't really ignore that. So that's just how that is. But there's a few books that are definitely worth reading. Another one I just wanted to mention is Rules for Radicals. I love this book. Almost everyone I know that gets pissed off at my channel or unsubscribes because I hype Saul Alinsky. I don't think any of them understand Saul Alinsky or have read the source material. And I'll get into another related point on that in a second. But in the intro to so many people say that they value democracy, and they're pro-freedom and pro-democracy, but I don't think most people are. And everyone hates Alinsky because they think he's a communist, but he clearly is not. And in the beginning of the book, anyway, he says, from the beginning, the weakness as well as the strength of the democratic ideal has been the people. People cannot be free unless they are willing to sacrifice some of their interests to guarantee the freedom of others. The price of democracy is the ongoing pursuit of the common good by all of the people. 135 years ago, Tocqueville gravely warned us that unless individual citizens were regularly involved in the action of governing themselves, self-governance would pass from the scene. Citizen participation is the animating spirit and force in a society predicated on voluntarism. And so I bring that up in the sense that people hate Alinsky, but I think that he makes great points, and I think that I've talked to enough people in the last 3 years to get a good sense of authoritarian personalities, and there's a funny irony here. Alinsky also talked about in that book about how even back when he wrote that in the 70s, the elements of the left had become indistinguishable from the far right. And he's talking about the authoritarianism. People on these people, the progressives that condemn my channel, for example, as being a far right channel because I've interviewed a lot of personalities on the far right. They would say, "Oh, I engage in hate speech," but the thing is, I don't actually believe that's true. And I think that the authoritarianism that comes from both the right and the left is conducive to hate, and it's more obvious on the right, and it's more overt on the right, but it's more sophisticated and on the left, and that's why you have to, it's easy to herd a bunch of low IQ racists into certain groups on Facebook so that you can monitor them, because they'll just say ignorant shit all day long, and they're just right out in the open. But there's a lot of people that have authoritarian personalities, or just are addicted to power and don't have principles or morals and stuff, that will operate PR firms and stuff like that, which absolutely control the perceptions of the masses, and they also create hate. And not to sound cliche, but one of the reasons I'm rebranding and I want to get away from a lot of this political garbage is that there's just I've done my share, and I'm still going to be politically active in the sense of that as an individual. I'll vote and I'll pay attention to what's going on around me, but I don't want to be associated with negativity all the time, and I don't wish to propagate hate. And I've already gone out of my way to, in many ways, represent the points of view that I want to represent. I am a very liberal person in many ways. I'm high in trait openness, and I have a high verbal cognition, a high degree of verbal cognition. It's, so it's just I like exploring new ideas. So Freebird Media is a very liberal platform in that sense. Now, I've done things like, through this platform, I got involved in identity politics and criticizing progressive lefts, SJWs, interviewing white identitarians. Another thing about that too is that people always forget that the reactionary right is called the reactionary right for a reason. And one of the things that helped the Nazis rise to power in Nazi Germany was, before all that happened, was the increased tolerance of Antifa-style street violence, and allowing that to propagate and get out of control is part of what allowed that reaction to manifest in Nazi Germany. So, by trying to counter the Antifa-style bullshit at the street level, I see that as actually trying to get ahead of fascism, because I understand what Nazis are created by. Being forced to react to stuff, and are often provoked by certain people. And so in this case, I think these Antifa people are just scumbags that are, but even most of them are abuse victims in my opinion. So I can even find sympathy to some degree in my heart for them. But there's just people looking all kinds of different reasons that the lower tiers of humanity manifest shitty political behavior. Antifa is one of the low levels. Then they provoke people, and combined with the media and all this other shit, they produce anti-white rhetoric, which takes a lot of people in the center and radicalizes them to the right. And there's a lot of people that are just on the fringe right because they're actual shitty, hateful people. But I have sympathy for the ones that get radicalized to be on the far right by being provoked by anti-white propaganda, which is an actual thing that is, malicious in its intent, I think, by the people that produce it, and not helpful to any kind of actual democracy with egalitarianism that believes in equal rights and stuff like that. So I guess I was using the Kinsella article here to kind of back up one of my points that there's just too much negativity and hate in politics coming from all around the spectrum. And there's a lot of trash on the right that I can't stand. And then there's a lot of garbage on the left. And then there's just people like that Warren Kinsella out there producing propaganda like this to the highest paying bidder, I guess. I mean, think of the how symbolic this story is, right? It's conservatives paying Warren Kinsella to run this smear campaign where they manufacture racist perceptions of the PPC through social media. And like the whole point of in concept, the idea and principle of a democracy is that a bunch of people are supposed to, a citizenry that all have kind of equal stake in the game, are supposed to come together and as a group be informed of issues and weigh the pros and cons of both sides of something, and then collectively make a decision on something. So, but I argue that we can't even remotely do that unless we would reform, our laws and our stuff regarding PR firms and propaganda and stuff, because everyone is so misinformed that even that's just, there's many reasons why I don't think our so-called democracy works, but one of them is just that we have to battle this kind of crap all the time, which prevents the real kind of dialogue that I think needs to happen in politics. So that was why I brought that article up. Now, just a few other points I wanted to make. Like I said, I'm going to rebrand Freebird Media a bit, so feel free to, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments. Sorry guys, I'm looking at them now, so give me a second here. And let me just look at some of these. Sorry guys. Someone says Kinsella did the same thing to Faith during her mayoral run. I have not read up on that, but that would make sense to me. Someone says, do you think Kinsella was a liberal plant to increase the wedge between CPC and PPC? I have no reason to think that or hypothesize that. I think he's just someone who has a company. He's a capitalist, and I'm sure he had some kind of lucrative contract with them. So, and I know that Kinsella's worked with he was a liberal strategist. I think he's worked for the Green Party as well. So I think he'll just go where the money is. It would be my suspicion. Howard G says, "How many skinheads or Nazis are there really?" Let's just time out that question. I'll come back to that. Patrick says, "Using the words purifying and hatred in the same sentence sounds like white supremacist talk to me. Pretty ironic, eh?" Proud Canadian says, "Hey Alex, how are you? You need to sort out this issue with Ronnie Cameron and successfully move on." We can pause that and get into that on a side note too. Someone else says, "Most Canadian men online are weak in real life. Black men just talk and natives do all blah 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 blah." I don't know what the point of that is. FBM seems neutral to me. I just read a Rolling Stone article about Russian bots, trolls, and how they incite hatred subtly by changing mindsets to social issues. That is an actual issue too. Unfortunate. Okay, yeah, Anthony says, "Bro, what's with the new brand?" And Kinsella's thought is kind of hot, though. Didn't they break up recently? Wonder what that is about. His wife, yeah, seems like they're going through a divorce, and that's kind of what's like doing him in. So interesting to watch this unfold. So I am going to rebrand this channel for a number of reasons. There's I haven't done a stream talking about this yet because I don't even know where to start. And so I'll just make a few different things. One is just I want to get away from negativity. There's a combination of external factors that are like kind of behind this, and just internal, my own feelings, thoughts, stuff like that. One is that to actually improve my situation in life, I need to be working more. I work in the service industry, but I need to actually probably be working overtime, and I just need to focus more on that. And because I don't really make any money from Freebird Media, we made a small amount on Patreon. Recently, we lost some of our patrons just because they themselves were supporters who really appreciate the work I've done, but they just can't afford to keep contributing because of their own circumstances, which I totally understand, and I felt bad about the whole thing. But it is essentially the whole Freebird thing is just a hobby for me, and it's something I do in my spare time. But my spare time is going to be dramatically reduced, so I kind of am going to be putting it a bit on the back burner unless I see some kind of potential to do something where it really sparks up again. I mean, I don't like thinking, like, I've taken the time to make sure my channel is professional and it's monetized because I don't get any strikes or do anything wrong. A lot of the streams get demonetized, but not all of them, and some of the videos are good and are monetized. So having built up the channel this much, I'll keep it, but I want to get away from politics, and especially identity politics stuff. I'd worked really hard on this book for a long time, and I was going to publish it, and then just recent events over the last month or so just changed my perspective a lot, or even furthered my perspective on some things. And then I just thought, this isn't something I want to put out there, and I would have to rewrite the last third of it, and I'm already out of time, and I don't have any more time I can't keep putting off like working more at other jobs to finish the book. And the whole thing, I've just come full circle over the last 3 years. Well, it's not that I ever wasn't an individualist, but I'm much more concerned or much more prioritized now with just taking care of my own self-interest and family, and my small group of inner friends that are important. And a lot of the political stuff that got me involved in Freebird Media in the beginning have changed or passed, or we've moved on, and a lot of the meta issues. And I'm not, I've evolved a lot of my own way of thinking because I keep it's ingesting new perspectives on things, or trying to see things from multiple points of view. And the thing about that is that if you talk to enough people across a political spectrum, if you're open-minded, you will see different truths from different angles. And there are different kind of truths. Like, there are mathematical truths, 2 + 2 is 4. But I understand what Peterson was saying, that he used to get grilled for all the time. We would talk about having to define that, because there are within people's own subjective experiences of the world, there are different things that their own, like, the more you learn about psychology, and especially evolutionary psychology, the more you appreciate how the mind works, and you see there are all these people out there bumping around with each other in the world, and they all have their own subjective kind of lens of the world for a reason. And there is a lot to be said about, good points to be made all across the spectrum if you're actually interested in, like, challenging your own self and your own intellect. So I feel I've done that to a pretty sufficient degree. And the other thing is, the more you learn about there's a thing that is just all over the internet with people, especially people that do like streaming and politics, and especially on the right, called Dunning-Kruger syndrome. And Dunning-Kruger syndrome is this phenomenon that Dunning and Kruger identified, where people just generally people can't judge them, they can't appraise themselves correctly with their own level of intelligence, and they tend to think they're smarter than they are. And I think that that's a sort of a sign. The key takeaway from that is to see people that are extremely ideological and rigid and confident and peddling a certain package of ideology usually are lower intelligent people, because as Socrates and even the ancient Greeks fully acknowledged, the more you know, the more you kind of know you don't know anything at all. And the more of an expert you become in any one field, the more complexity you see all around you. So you start to become less dogmatic about things and more open-minded. And that doesn't mean that there aren't some things that I'll take hard stances on, or that I always believe in, or certain principles or values. I just mean I don't want to engage in running any kind of platform that really just propagates useless negativity. I don't want to deal with low IQ people and their negativity either. And I don't really, because I'm doing this for a hobby, I really don't care about growing the audience base that much. Unless, if I shift the focus maybe and try to really push it as some kind of business or something, maybe I'd care more. But right now, I'm more about just not using a lot of radical bullshit. Not using a lot of rhetorical bullshit to try to capitalize on some fringe audience. I'd rather just make neutral media or do streams where I encourage the exploration of ideas, and for people to challenge their own ideas, and to encourage feedback from the audience, help me better understand my perspective on a lot of things. Because I like dialectic conversation a lot more than trying to build some fringe audience of people who want to hear somebody spew negativity all day long. Another thing too is after I take a break with the channel, I feel like if I rebrand, change the imagery up a bit. I like Canada, the theme of being Canadian, and I think that culture is upstream from politics, and I don't really have, like, as far as politics go, I supported the PPC because I like them, but really there aren't any parties that I can really get behind. And if you really want to have an influence on things in society, you should really, I think, focus on creating culture, perhaps more so than trying to focus on like promoting a political party or something like that. And so if you're developing yourself or evolving yourself as an individual, like I'm trying to do with this channel, you figure out, you kind of divorce yourself from political labels, and you figure out what your values are more, and then you kind of cultivate them on a personal level. And I would say that creating culture then, especially art, is a powerful way that you can put your values into play without having to get overtly political. And there's a lot of things that piss me off about the fringe right in Canada, and I call them the trash right. And one of them is that I can't stand people that don't have manners, and the level of how unsophisticated and stupid they are. And this is something that Jim Goad has been, identified in the 90s when he was talking in the Redneck Manifesto about how white trash are used as scapegoats for a lot of stuff. And it's not taboo to shit on them the way it is other minority groups, and that's all true. Pardon me. And so sometimes I defend a lot of blue-collar, right-wing groups, because I feel like they get manipulated by these more intelligent, crummy people that do like PR-type stuff. But also, having to interact with certain type of people that just don't have any class or any manners is just draining, and I wish not to do it anymore. It's just annoying. One of the other important books on the channel, where did it go? Is right here. Hold on a second. This is a book I hype. It's one of all the books on the channel important, but this is an important one too. It's the Professor in the Cage by Jonathan Gottschall. And what he wrote about as an English teacher and an academic who quit academia to start training martial arts and MMA late in life, he writes about in this book. And I started training boxing at the beginning of 2019, and as I get more into boxing culture, and now I'm the guy that trains me in boxing. He and I are going to take up jiu-jitsu together, like BJJ, and I've just always been obsessed with martial arts my whole life. The more I get into the culture of it and the respect behind it and stuff like that, the more I feel that if I'm not working, I'd rather spend my limited free time just training martial arts, because I love it, and I love the honor behind it and the respect and all that stuff. And I can't. Um, I like this book because he talks about how honor culture evolved into dignity culture, and then how that kind of de-evolved into victimhood culture and stuff. But I like. Sorry guys, I think I lost my thing there. Just a second, I'll fix the camera. Sorry guys. I just I don't wish to engage with trash and negativity and idiots that don't want to have intelligent conversation anymore. So that's another reason why I want to try to stay away from a lot of the trash right in anything I do. Now let me get back to the chat really quick. Sorry guys. Kate Mogg is in the chat, which is awesome. I'm actually really glad to see you in the chat. I know that talking with my friend, as I've talked with a lot of people that have made me think about a lot of stuff, and there is like I said, that's why there's a lot of truth all over the place when people say things. The things with politics is that almost all the buzzwords that you see on the internet and stuff are exactly that, buzzwords. And so everything that we talk about needs to be put into specific context. So general phrases can be true or untrue, kind of depending, obviously, on the context you're using them. So when somebody says, trying to think of an example, like just a really basic one, I guess, like Canada is a racist country, period. That's something that does actually depend on a lot of it is and it isn't, depending on what they mean by that, I guess. So things like rape culture, for example, do and don't exist, kind of depending on how it's being framed or whatever's being said about it. White privilege exists in some ways and doesn't. You have to kind of break down or judge on what that means by however it's being used in whatever context. Like in the book I was working on, I talk about white privilege, for example, and I break down Peggy McIntosh's seminal essay, The Invisible Knapsack, which she lists her 40 examples of white privilege and that kind of thing. Sorry, there's stuff going on in the chat that people can't see that I'm trying to figure out. Sorry, just lost my train of thought for a second. Where was I going with that? Somebody remind me what I was just saying before I got distracted by the comments. Sean Melville, so Scheer had no reason to hire Kinsella, and only Hamish Marshall heads being exposed as being involved. It's all a ruse, Alex. Your thinking is very shallow. Hey, I don't know. I don't think my thinking is shallow. I just show me what you're talking about if you think there's some kind of conspiracy going on with all that. Because I'm just going off the CBC article, and it seems to me like they've shown a pretty good case that it's the Conservatives working with them. That's all I know about that. Sorry, I'm trying to go back to my thought pattern from a second ago. Oh yeah. Sorry, I was thinking of some of that. So again, I don't. I went out for drinks with a friend one time, and I was sad to see hear their honest perception of me or Freebird Media, I guess. But I can also say that I understand certain things because through my work, I've done a lot of associating with right-wing personalities, and I worked with Faith Goldie and a lot of people who I don't wish to hang out with or socialize with outside of anything of the journalistic work I've already done with them to a degree. And my stream is also getting all choppy now, so sorry about this, guys. Let me know if you can hear me all right. As long as you can hear me all right, I'll keep talking. Otherwise, I might have to end this stream. Oh yeah, with the white privilege stuff, with the the article by Peggy McIntosh, I think white privilege is all a bunch of crap. When in the examples that she gives, and Peterson was right when he says that, when he says white privilege is a thing that can be used as an ideological weapon to shut down conversation when people don't have good points. And I know from personal experience that that's absolutely true. So I think that white privilege in that context is all garbage. Sometimes people use it in other contexts though, where you do see what I think is what people mean by white privilege all the time, and I think people even like Faith Goldie have white privilege, and really that correlates with having money or status at the end of the day. But obviously, since we live in a majority white society, kind of those two things are overlapping. So like some people like Faith Goldie can take political risks and not really have any serious consequence from it because she's independently wealthy and she's marrying somebody with money, and it's all kind of a game at the end of the day because again, when you have money, it's really just about trying to figure out how to make more. And that's what I think, like the whole rebel media and the trash right boomer media scene, sometimes I think like some part of them serves a purpose, and then I also just think they're obviously trying to cash in on anxiety and kind of manipulate boomers and just cash in on the trash right, which I think is sort of a shitty thing to do. Sean Melville says, let me get this straight. CBC's coverage of this topic is solid, even though they have a history of lies. No, I don't think it's solid. I know from the way they've lied about me multiple times that they're obviously not honest. I'm just saying, based on this article, just show me your link to other evidence without coming across like a schizophrenic and linking me to a bunch of obscure Reddit crap. Like if you have like a good article that just kind of shows me more what you're talking about, just throw it up here and maybe you're onto something. I just saying I don't know what you're talking about yet. Another comment here. The problem is the left redefines words to obfuscate what's being said. So in a sense, it's like they're not even speaking the same language. Oh yeah, 100%. That was like a huge chunk. That was like a third of my book. Most of everything that's going on politically is about language games and manipulating language and words, and that's why I put this book on the list, the 7 of the reading list, and also put 1984, just so you can see how language can be and history can be rewritten. I think that I've been, some people say, Alex, you're a far right person and you cover for alt right people and white supremacy, and you are a closet white supremacist. But to clarify, like I am absolutely not a white supremacist, at all. And the thing is, I think that my channel it's a free speech channel. It doesn't cater just to right-wing people. I mean, I didn't do the math on it, but we talked to a lot of libertarians and a lot of kind of random independent people, and the thing, it was a free speech channel, so right-wing issues started to get covered a lot because they were more prevalent. People on the right are more willing to speak to me, and also over 3 years, I myself, like the first third of my book, I talked mostly about psychology, and I mentioned a lot about Robert Anton Wilson, which is one of the 7 on the list. Talking about how I'm more of a gonzo journalist in a sense, and I can't be 100% objective, so I'm not going to try to be, because I have emotional triggers and my own biases and stuff, so I was just trying to be more honest about my experiences and why I'm perceiving them that way as consideration to be taken in amongst a bunch of perspectives. So, that's important. Language is important, and those 7 books are just really, really good. If you read them, the other one is why beautiful people have more daughters. Is just because if you get a perspective of evolutionary psychology, it's a really good framework for understanding human nature, predicting things, and understanding things. It's just a good perspective to have when you're talking about human behavior. And political psychology plays into evolutionary theory like exactly, so it's just good to know that stuff. There's also there's so much to say that I obviously keep kind of going off topic here, but basically back to the white supremacy stuff. I very few of the people I actually interviewed were white supremacists, but there were a lot of just hateful, shitty people. As a free speech channel, I felt obligated to. Someone keeps telling me to call them in the chat. I'll touch base with you after the stream. So don't worry. So where was I going with that? But there is a lot of crap on the right, and I'm just I feel like I've done my part to investigate it, and in reading various books, I have got my own perspectives enhanced. Now, one of the other things I wanted to mention is, you know, someone else had once brought this up, and they said, you're not balancing your coverage enough between the right and the left. And the part of that is that's true because I only have so many hours in a day, and the mainstream media already gives you dominant the left, so I mostly will give the right to counter that out. Now, I already have an English degree that made me take Canadian Studies courses when I was at Carleton University, and I've read a lot of books on the subject of Canadian culture and Canadian identity, and I recommend that everyone always read books on both sides of the spectrum on issues, just to for your own growth. So here are two books. This would be the left and the right on issues of Canadian heritage and stuff like that. And so I have both perspectives. Like, I've been exposed to both. I'm familiar with both. Whereas most people that argue with me on whatever issue have one of these two, but not both. Very few people, or it's the smaller minority group of smarter, more intelligent people that I like to meet through this channel that are self-aware enough to know that you have to at least challenge your own side with knowing the other side. So a lot of the as I'm rebranding, I took down the Facebook page, and about 80% of the YouTube channel's just private now. So what's left is what made the cut, and some of the stuff I took down not because I had to, not because anyone forced me to. I just felt like it after a certain amount of time. The Richard Spencer tape that came out where he was ranting, it's pretty bad, and he's not. It didn't surprise. He's someone I've talked to before. I'm not part of the alt-right. I'm not a white supremacist. He's a genuine kind of racist white supremacist. That tape that came out, not that nobody ever really doubted that. I mean, but once you hear the tape of him talking, it's pretty bad to want to associate with him anyway. And then that combined, just hearing that combined with a whole bunch of experiences of just trash right crap that over a couple of months just made me think, I really want to disassociate from any of this kind of stuff. It's there's just so much shit coming from both sides of the spectrum that I see, and I understand it all kind of. Once you study it for enough time and you try to really understand it, you do see what's going on. I get it. My advice to most people is there's because there are some valid points being made on both sides and things, but like with history, I like Ricardo Duchesne. Most people on the right I wouldn't want to ever associate with, but I don't mind hyping Ricardo Duchesne's work still, because I do like this book, Canada in Decay. It does make some good points in it. I've seen the way it was driven out of academia seemed shitty to me, but he's just one example of an intelligent person who has some good points to say on the right in Canada. But most of the fringe right in Canada is pretty cringy, and if you should know history if you value it for yourself, and you should try to keep it alive. Build your own libraries, teach your own kids about real history, because the schools are becoming corrupt, and there is a lot of progressive propaganda that's rewriting the truth of Canadian heritage. But beyond that, people should be realistic about multiculturalism and globalism and stuff, because that's all happening. White supremacy actually annoys the hell out of me. That was another thing that started to piss me off around Remembrance Day. If you are an actual patriot of Canada, you should understand your Canada, and you should know its history, and you should know that from day one we have always been multicultural. We are a mix of Europeans and Aboriginals, obviously, and the Europeans were French and English, who were distinct groups. So while it is true that Canada has always been population-wise majority white up until our parents' generation, that doesn't mean that it was ever an ethno-state or a white ethno-state. It was always a multicultural. And that's kind of what I liked about it. I liked that whole. My personality always just kind of liked Canada because we represented that kind of explorer mentality fused with Aboriginal culture in a big landscape that was new and not, European, I guess. And I think that a lot of just racist people just have convinced themselves that Canada is an ethno state of some sort, which it isn't, and they don't really, they just pretend like they value Canadian heritage, but they don't really understand it, and that annoys me, I guess. So people should educate themselves on Canadian history and value it, but also be prepared that you're not gonna this the way culture is going, it's not reversing. So the demographics will change to a degree. Grifters out there are going to try to rally people's anxieties up about